those are different ways that we can actually go about doing this. So what we'll do in a sec is we'll look at the actually doing this within Instant JChem. But before I do that, I'll just point you to this particular page in the user guide. It's called How the Instant JChem Items Fit Together, and it provides a good description of what all these different things in Instant JChem are, what an entity is and what a field is, how those relate to tables and columns and things like that, what a relationship is, what a data tree is, and how all these things interrelate with each other, and the sort of the ownership of these, whether these are shared between all users, or whether the user has whether each of these belongs to the individual user. For instance, an entity or a field or a data tree is shared between all users, but a view, such as a form or a grid view, belongs to the individual user. So I won't go into this page in detail, but I do point you to it. That if you are wanting to do any sort of serious database design in Instant JChem, then it's very much worth looking through this page in detail and really getting a good understanding of it. And it goes through the basic process of going from a raw database table, showing you the relationship between an entity and a table, and what relationships are, and what the data tree is, and how that's structured, and then moves on to things like forms and views, and explains all the relationship between these things. So it's well worth spending sort of 15 minutes or so reading through this document if you're in the business of building databases in Instant JChem. So we're back to IJC now, and I've got connected here a local database, which we're mostly going to use here, just because it's much easier for me to demo things with the local database, because you can create them and delete them very easily and load the demo data in. But I've also got a connection to a MySQL database that's running, in my case, on this computer, but more usually it'll be on your network. So we'll use mostly the local database as an example. We've loaded one with the demo data in that comes with Instant JChem, and this is quite nice data that explains things like relationships and things, and we've used that a lot in the previous webinars. And our main friend in building, when we're doing database design, is the schema editor. And you open that just by double-clicking on the database schema node, or you can right-click on it and say Edit Schema, and the schema editor opens in the main window. And in the schema editor, on the left-hand side, you've got an Explorer view with 4 different tabs. Working from the right to the left, we first see all the tables that are in the database. On the next tab, you see any views that have been created on those tables. These are database views. And then on the next tab, you see the entities. Now, the entities are Instant JChem's representation of any tables or views. And basically, the Instant JChem can only use tables or views in the database once they have been promoted to an entity. The entity provides extra information that is needed for Instant JChem to be able to interpret the data properly. So if you're going to create an entity yourself, which you can do just by right-clicking and say New Structure Entity, give it a name, structures is the default. You can set any of the properties. There are quite a few you can set up, particularly for structure tables. It's then created a new entity and the table that goes with it, and it's added all the fields for you that access the columns in the database table. So when you create the table in Instant JChem itself, the table, the entity, and everything is automatically created for you. And then you can use that entity straight away. You can create a new data tree for that entity, and then create a new, let's say, grid view for it. And at the moment it's an empty table. Go straight in and start loading structures and other information into those tables. So this is the easiest way to go about creating tables in Instant JChem. It's to create them directly. You can create either a structure table, or you can create what we call a standard table. Standard tables are for non-structural data. We create a new standard table. There are many fewer options for that, but the process is much the same. We've now got a standard table, and we can add fields to it to manage our own data. So with this, at the moment, we've only got the ID field. That is the unique ID for each row. We can add a new field. So let's say we wanted to give the field the name. You can control the database parameters. So if you wanted the name to be only up to 100 characters long, you can change the column length. You can change the column type to any other supported types, and various other options. So now we've added a new field to that database table that we can use to store the name of whatever it is. If we now wanted to add a field to store quantity, you might expect the quantity to be a decimal number. You give it the name that you want, in our case quantity. Again, you can specify the column types and parameters, and this way quite quickly you can build up the fields you want to store your data. We'll add one more, let's say for the date that it was entered, or something like this. And so you can quickly build up the tables you need and the fields you need to actually store that information in the database. So this is how you can build up individual tables.